All right, hello everyone. This is Sir Adrian back here to film the Imperial Russian turn for the summer of 1915 in our current game of Global War 1914 titled Operation Bersaglieri. Before we get to that though, there are a few housekeeping items. So first off, the German Empire is going to have 1 IPP less. I do believe they're down to 42, and that's already been updated in the TTS file by me due to forgetting to garrison Warsaw. So because that's worth an IPP, they have to have an infantry class unit there or they can't collect that IPP. There's the heavy artillery, not on my map, but on the TTS file for the Imperial Germans. That was misplaced, so that was placed back with the 86th Army. And they have an attack into Oaxaca from western Mexico. So we'll go on over there and do that. So that's their current setup. Last turn, the revolutionaries took Oaxaca. I was told they would move everything in. So that would be this militia, these 7 infantry, and there is a bit of mountain terrain there when they're crossing, so they would be subject to -1 on the first round of combat, as well as the cavalry. I imagine, and this is just because I don't have enough pieces, but this is a Federalist infantry as well. I imagine they wouldn't want to bring these militias out of Mexico City and Veracruz, but I was told everything that can reach. So we will do that for now, but if that was not the case, we'll just bring everything from Western Mexico, and those two could be excluded. But this militia will be at a -1 as well, because there is mountain terrain once it crosses the border. And that one will just be attacking what it normally does. And militia attack at a 1 actually anyways, so that should be fine regardless. So we'll go ahead and move all this over to the board. Try to do this one-handed here while I film. And defending, we have an artillery and a cavalry. So we'll go ahead and set that up. So we're gonna have 1 artillery defending at a 4. Gonna have a cavalry defending at a 2. We're going to have 1, 2, sorry about that, 3 militia defending at a 1. Take the white one for the militia. 3 militia defending at a 1. We're going to have 7 infantry on the first round of combat attacking at a 1 due to the mountain terrain. And a cavalry unit attacking at a 3. Or a 2, sorry, due to the mountain terrain. And these will all be at a 1 on the first round of combat. There we go. So we'll go ahead and roll that first. We should have 7, 8, 9, 10 at 1. So we'll grab some dice here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 3. So we'll go ahead and roll those. Actually, we'll do the first striking unit first. So we'll go ahead and roll that. So that's a miss at a 6. Now we'll roll for the attackers. So 10 at 1. So no hits on the first round. And then we'll do the cavalry at a 2. So nothing. The defending cavalry at a 2. So a 4, nothing. So now they go again. So now these infantry and the cavalry go back to what they normally attack at. Militia attack at a 1 regardless, unless they were boosted by artillery. So we'll go ahead and roll for our 3 militia. Ooh, that's a 2, so close, but not quite. Now our 7 infantry at a 2. So that's 2 hits. So both the hits they needed. And we'll roll the cavalry just to see if it would have hit. No, but they got the 2 they needed. Then defending, they'll have the 1 artillery at a 4. Missed. And the cavalry at a 2. So miss. So this revolutionary cavalry and artillery are dead. And the Federalists take over Oaxaca with 7 infantry, a cavalry unit, and 3 militia. So I'll leave these here for now because I'm not going to be doing any attacks for the Imperial Russians, but this will all be updated in the TTS file as well. So that's that for the Imperial Germany housekeeping. For the British, just a couple things to point out. So they actually are going to have 1 extra IPP for the next turn, so 43 instead of 42, because Subscullion forgot to collect the +1 IPP that he has for his trade with the Greeks. It's definitely something that's easy to forget, but yeah, always good to double check the diplomacy chart if we could remember to. So the Lend-Leased artillery unit that he Lend-Leased to the French wouldn't have gone into Picardy. That's where it was placed, but Picardy has a minor port, and minor facilities can only accept up to 4 IPPs worth of Lend-Leased goods. So it would have had to go to Normandy instead, where you do have a major shipyard. So that was corrected. And artillery cost a 5, as we all know, so that's why it couldn't have gone there. And then the seaplane. So the seaplane that was in Gibraltar, there was some discussion between Laker and Subscullion about its movement, and it ended up going to Paris in the end. In fact, it could have moved 5. So seaplanes have a base movement of 4, but not only do seaplane bases give seaplanes only an extra +1 movement, but any major facilities, so shipyards, dockyards, and ports anywhere on the map, if you're leaving a sea zone or a land zone, sorry, that has one of those, such as Gibraltar that has a major dockyard, on top of giving ships that are out of port in a neighboring sea zone a +1 bonus to their movement, it also gives seaplanes and seaplanes only, no other air units, a +1 to their movement as well. So that could have moved 5. So for example, it could have flown from Gibraltar 1, 2, 3, even 4 and ended up in Aquitaine, or 5 and ended up in Normandy if it wanted to. But we'll leave in Paris for now. So that's just for future reference. Now, for the French, so as I said, the artillery in Picardy would have went to Normandy. And so it would have had to have been railed into Lorraine, because when he moved the artillery that he had been lend-leased, or the one he had gotten from the previous turn from the Americans in cash and carry that he had purchased from them, and then lend-lease that were in Normandy, or one was in Normandy, one was in Picardy. He walked that one over. Technically, both should have been railed. And it didn't really matter in the end because he had two militia here that he railed, so he ended up passing his allotted strategic rail movement of 3, but the militia that was in Picardy could have just walked into Lorraine, so it kind of all evens itself out. So there's nothing that has to be changed there, which is good. So those two militia were fine because one of them could have been railed, and the other one could have just walked into Lorraine from Picardy, anyways. So that's all good. And then just for reference, as this was asked by Hybrid, and he was wondering this, the C zone. So the British Midlands is not, in fact, supposed to border the C zone east of northern England, at least in 1914. I think he said in 1936, which I haven't really played yet or looked into too much. It does border it, but as you can see here, the British Midlands does not border that sea zone. There is a seaplane base here, or an air base, but yeah, it cuts off there, so that does not border that sea zone. So there's that. So that's it for the French housekeeping. For the Ottomans, the only thing I could think of was that he forgot his free diplomacy roll from the previous turn. I definitely know he did take territory. At least I'm like 99% positive that he did against the Russians. So he had already paid for Romania to try and influence that. However, I imagine he would have potentially gone for maybe something like Spain. So we'll go ahead and roll that. So that's a miss anyway. So regardless of what he would have gone for, it would have been a miss. So we don't have to worry about that. But that's something else too. It's definitely quite easy to forget the free diplomacy roll. So on top of checking for the extra IPP in trade, definitely a good thing for sure to always check for that. Even when you're declaring your purchases there after rolling tech, just before doing anything else, is when you do that, whether you're buying any influence or not. Because yeah, you wouldn't want to miss out on some of the influence rolls for sure. So that's it with the Ottomans. And then the USA. So not this turn, but some housekeeping items from the American turn in the spring of 1915. So the first thing, and the most important one, critical actually, is it forgot to roll his 1d6 income increase. So that as well is definitely something you don't want to forget. In fact, it should be the very first thing you do on the American turn, because it dictates what you can do, in fact, for the rest of the turn. And if you happen to, by chance, start forgetting some of those, you might either never enter the war or enter a lot later than you might have other ways. So that's something else, though, that's pretty easy to forget. So it's a good thing we noticed it. But yeah, definitely something we want to make sure we don't forget. So we'll go ahead and roll that for him. Okay, that was a terrible roll, unfortunately. So a 1. Yeah, the Americans ended up collecting 17. I think it's because they had saved money when they had purchased stuff that previous round. So they would be at 14. I'll double check that in the TTS file, but yeah, they should be at 14 peacetime income. So their income is going to change as well. And actually, that brings me to the next point. So they cannot lend lease to the Republic of China / the nationalists because they have to hit 20 IPP to be able to do that, at which point they can lend lease any unit type, obviously barring those locked by tech research, so like tanks, things like that. But yeah, before that, they can't lend lease anything. So I didn't place it on my map, but they had lend leased a mountain infantry into the major port in Kwangtung, but that wouldn't be allowed. So Kwangtung will be empty, and the Americans will get the 4 IPP that they spent on that back into their bank. And they will also get 4 IPP back for one of the Marines they purchased and placed in. I put it in Washington, but it might have been in New York, I think. But regardless, whichever city it's in, they could only buy one of those. Just like every other nation's elite units in the game, you can only purchase one per turn. So I do believe they cost 4, so they would get an extra 4 IPP back for that one extra Marine they had purchased, and the other one would just stay where it is. And another quick side note, I had noticed in the past people referring to the naval infantry as Marines. I could definitely see why, but I think in terms of clarity, especially for people who might be following, it might be a good idea to say specifically, I'm purchasing a naval infantry, because technically in the game, it's only the Americans that have Marines. That's their elite unit, whereas every other country, including the USA, in fact, can just purchase regular naval infantry. So that's definitely something I think we should try to avoid, just for preventing any confusion, I think, down the line. So that should be it for the Americans. And finally, the Republic of China. So they ended up with more IPP somehow than they should have. I can't remember the exact amount. But yeah, they should only have 4 IPP instead of, I think it was 7 or something to spend the next turn. Or 6, sorry, yeah, and not 6 that they had. Because the turn before that, when I went back and looked at the footage, they only had their 4 IPP, as they start with 3, and they gained 1 from taking over Yunnan province. And they spent that on 2 militia, which cost 2 each. So they had 0, and then they collected 4. So this turn, they should have only had 4 to spend. So they spent it all buying a mountain infantry, which they placed into Yunnan. So unless there's something that I missed, they still only have 4 IPPs worth of territories, as Szechuan is not worth anything. So they will be with 4 IPPs to purchase. So that's it for the housekeeping. I think, like the last one, I'll actually have this as a separate video because it has gotten quite long, because there was quite a few things to go through and make sure I didn't miss. And yeah, so we'll end it here. We'll upload this, and I will be right back to do the Imperial Russian turn.